Mikhail Saakashvili is a president loved by his people. Since replacing Edvard Shevardnadze as president of the Republic of Georgia, his reputation as a strong, incorruptible and fearless leader has grown. The latest test of Saakashvili's presidency has come in hostile threats from the breakaway region of Adzharia. Once again, the troubled Caucasus are facing the very real threat of civil war. On an official visit to meet the local strongman Aslan Abishidze last month, Saakashvili was turned back at the border, sparking high-level negotiations between the Georgian president and the man he has dubbed head of a criminal regime. Presidents Putin and Bush have also been dragged into negotiations, as has Turkish leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan, in attempts to control the rapidly deteriorating situation since then. Members of the human rights organisation Liberty Now have maintained email communications with pro-Georgian opposition in Adzharia. The reports are that it is brutally suppressed there by a Mafiosi clan, which earns billions from smuggling and drugs. Georgiy feels the situation is going to test all of the leadership skills of their new president.
It's a huge problem, and this problem is not created right now. It has always been there, and it was possible because of the negligence, at least the negligence of the former Georgian leadership, which was eager to make deals with Abishidze as long as he would give them the part of his shares and part of his votes, which he controlled. Because Adzharia is a place where we had only one voter, Mr. Abishidze. He was deciding for the whole voters, whole public. We can't tolerate that anymore. We have no right to do so.
It's a well-known story in Caucasus politics. Forceful suppression of opposition, corruption, drug trade, nepotism. But the accession of Saakashvili in January's Rose Revolution has brought renewed hope things can change. On 28th of March, the proportional representation seats were voted in Georgia's two-tiered election, with free and fair elections widely reported. Saakashvili's National Democratic Movement claimed 67% of the vote. The elections were a key test for Saakashvili and his team, but more importantly, they were a key test for Georgian democracy. Rarely were candidate lists ever scrutinised in quite the same way that they were before these elections. Georgian elections have historically been riddled with electoral fraud. Some Georgians have voted twice with fake ID papers. But no longer. Saakashvili insisted on election monitors at all polling stations, trained, well-paid and impartial. Geopolitics used to work for a critical NGO here that monitored electoral fraud. Now he's boss of the electoral authority itself.
The major difference is the political will from the government side to have free and fair elections. We saw that for November 2nd elections, government didn't show the political will to conduct elections freely in free and fair manner. Now the attitude and the approach from the government side is totally different.
The election threw up no surprises. The national movement that deposed Shevardnadze in the Rose Revolution was always the clear favourite. And, as expected, only one other party, the rightist opposition coalition, even gained the 7% needed to enter parliament. The election was Saakashvili's first test, but alongside the Adzharian problem, his major battle will be combating corruption in one of the most notoriously corrupt countries in the former USSR. Saakashvili has made spectacular and high-profile arrests almost every day he's been in office, with many being broadcast on national television. The arrest of the former transportation minister, among others, has elicited applause, but also some concerns.
For example, when they are planning an arrest of a person, sometimes the impression is that they pay more attention to the show effect of such event than to protection of rights of those persons whom they are going to arrest. And you can feel that when you see some news about how some person will be arrested.
But politicians here are quick to admit the occasional abuse of human rights is all part of the learning process. Georgia has little experience of democracy and freedom, and the police in particular have effectively to relearn their trade. The next hot point for Saakashvili is the economy. Georgia, once the richest republic in the USSR, is today a poorhouse. Old industrial cities such as Rustavi, half an hour by car from Tbilisi, are more or less in ruins. Foreign investors are still a long way from putting their money in a country threatened by civil war and hanging under the long shadow of authoritarian and corrupt leadership. The power supply here is appalling. Early in the day we have about half an hour, then they turn it off again. In the evening we have half an hour, then we sit in the dark and cannot watch the news on television. Life here is hard, but Georgian hospitality is undiminished. It's not long until glasses are raised in a famous Georgian toast. Drinks are down to no poverty and a rosy future, and that Georgia once again becomes the economic powerhouse it once was. But Saakashvili's most delicate problem is tempering the threat from Russia, its massive neighbour to the north and west. Russia still has 2 military bases in the country, a very public reminder it intends to retain as much control as possible over the Republic. The USA are Georgia's primary backer, financing equipment and training for elite special units in the Georgian army. These young soldiers earn $250 a month. Their jobs are highly sought after. Since the arrival of Saakashvili, the prestige of the army has risen immensely.
Hey, tell them to wait till the car all around. We're firing all around, right? Yes.
The interest of the great powers in Georgia is rooted in strategic reasons, and is clear to see on any drive down to the coast. This enormous pipeline pumps millions of barrels of Caspian Sea oil to Europe.
This competition between superpowers can never be balanced from Russian point of view, because Russia considers, especially American participation here, as meddling in its own backyard. And this oil pipeline has been considered by Russia as a symbol of this American participation, but now we have also train and equip, we have also military cooperation with the United States, and we have this English-speaking young cabinet which Russia considers as embodiment of this American influence in Georgian politics. So from Russian politics it's very unbalanced, and Russia would like to change this balance very much.
But it's clear to see Georgia sees Russia as merely a partner, while the USA is a friend with common values and aspirations.
We are proud to be a friend of the United States. I'm speaking on behalf of every Georgian.
Among the most optimistic Georgians are the media. Journalists at critical TV station Rustavi 2 were chased and beaten up by Shevardnadzi's thugs. Only since the Rose Revolution and the presidency of Saakashvili has there been anything approaching press freedom. I always used to think, up until the age of 40 I'll be an optimist. After 40 I'll be a pessimist. But now I believe that a really new, dynamic generation has come to power in Georgia. A generation with new values and ideas, without any of the communist hang-ups. Saakashvili has had an unnerving but confidence-boosting start to his presidency. This latest crisis is a real test of his leadership.
It's not so has been that is